Talk to Me is owned by a sex line. So
wait, what?
Oh yeah,
I gotta back up.
That's my pivot. Yeah,
Back up.
Oh no,
What just happened?
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Taking Action. I am your host, Michael Allen. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Peaton, and also Sam Tobin. Sam is a data installer at Verafin, as well as the creator of an app called Talk to Me, which is a grief and trauma app. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I've been somewhat in the loop of Talk to Me for, geez, probably since maybe a year after you thought of it.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain to us a little bit of what the app is and what you're thinking for its development?
Yeah, that used to be such a simple question, and now that we've pivoted so many times, it's changed a lot. But the app basically just started because I was in school, and I hate school, so that was kind of an issue. Yeah, that was kind of the issue. And I was trying to get through it, and I was just not having I wasn't having a great time trying to figure out how to get through it. I hated doing mindless projects. Because at this point, too, I think I was 28. So, like, I've already done the MUN route. I've already done other, like, schooling that I wasn't really enjoying. And I lost my mom before COVID. And that was kind of the only thing I think of. I can only really think of that loss. My mom was, I know it's cliche at this point, but, like, my mom really was my best friend. She was just everything. Like, everyone says they have the best mom ever, but, like, I truly believe I did. She loved me, which I know takes a lot of energy. So I kind of always was thinking about her. It was, like, really hard to sometimes get through it still is really hard to get through, like, holidays and certain days of the year, and especially when you're in school. And the program it was really new to me. I'm not a computer guy, like, by trade, I guess is the word. It's not a natural thing for me to code and to dig deep into that world. So
I can relate to that, actually.
Yeah, like, I just sometimes I find it, like, fascinating. Like, I think it's like it's like learning a brand new language, like French, but then at other times it's just like learning French, and you're like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
So I was, like, on the cusp of just quitting, and it wasn't until I don't remember her title, but her name was Wanda Tiller. She reached out to me and she was like, hey, just noticed, like, you haven't really been in class, like, you're a little slow on, like, some projects and stuff like that. And I told her, like, I don't know, it must have just been, like, one of those bad days where you're just like, guess somebody's getting this vent, this rant I'm about to go on. And I just told her the truth. I was like, I'm just really struggling with it. Like, it's not my thing. I really miss my mom. And I, like, in that blurb I had to her, I kind of remember, I was like, I had this idea for an app just to kind of help people that are like me, because, like, I'm really struggling some days, like, especially with the COVID and being trapped in your house. And, like, that was my mom's house type thing. That's kind of how, obviously my father's there too, but it was hard to walk in certain rooms and not see her. It was sometimes hard just to, like, go to sleep and know she's not there, even though it was already a year, maybe even 2 years. Sorry, after the passing. So that stuff made it, like, really difficult. So when I was going through school, I had to think of something to get me through it, to be honest. And that was kind of my idea. It was like, our phones are attached to us anyway. There's a lot of clutter. There's, like, a lot of mess. And, I'm not above that mess and clutter. I scroll way too much more than I should. I'm on YouTube far more often than I should be. And, I just wanted something on there to help me instead of, like, make me compare myself to other people.
Right.
And then in saying that, I came across a post on Instagram. And again, it was just because I was mindlessly scrolling about this person. He was in New York. I remember that very specifically because his picture was, I forget the part in New York, but ironically, I only know it because I played the Spider-Man game. So I was like, yeah, that was in Spider-Man. Okay. And his entire post was about how COVID, like, took so much from him, but he couldn't leave his apartment. And I just thought about how, like, raw that was, because I've also, unfortunately, have posted some, like, pretty raw things on the internet about missing mom, about the thing I'm going through, whether it was, like, depression or the anxiety of it all. And I just thought, like, I'm not the only person who is struggling with this, is struggling with grief and losing someone and kind of being stuck in life. So why can't I develop something? I mean, I'm in school for it. So why can't I develop something, or at least attempt to develop something that might help someone?
Yeah.
So that's how it started.
That's genuinely how it started.
What does the app do exactly? What do you want the app to do? I remember we chatted about possibly being journaling.
Yeah, so like, again, it's pivoted a lot now because I think honestly, the more I dive into mental health, and I just dove into it, whether it's podcasts, reading books. I even was silly enough and spent money to like read scientific papers because I was like, this might help me. So I did that and I dove into it, and I just kind of realized that like mental health is really just an extension of everything else. It's just like your physical health, and I find that when my mental health wanes, my physical health also wanes. Like I told you guys like before the podcast, like I gained a lot of weight, and I'm in the process of kind of getting back to being healthy and comfortable with my body again, which is tough. But I noticed that even in that spin, like my mental health went up and went down. And
It's so interesting because you're saying about your mental health. I noticed that. I guess I always took mental health seriously, but not as seriously as I did after everything happened with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Before I was kind of like, yeah, it's there. I didn't but I never thought it could happen to me.
Yeah,
and then
COVID
happened.
I think that's a normal response, though.
But then COVID happened, and I was like, this is hard.
Well, if it makes you feel better, like I never thought my mom was going to get sick ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful ignorance, to be honest. I think I was very lucky to ever think that. Because now that I've been doing the app, I get a lot of, I don't want to call them random messages, because I mean, I put this out there for the world, so anyone's allowed to reach out. But I get a lot of messages talking about how they don't have a great relationship with their mother or father, or it's usually something like a family member. And when that person passed, like they didn't feel those things, but yet when their dog passed, they were emotionally destroyed.
Yeah.
They took a week off work, and gaining weight is one that they always say, like, oh, until this thing happened, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's a loss of pregnancy, like they lose their baby, or sometimes they lose their job, and all of a sudden they kind of just give up on themselves as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I don't want to oversay it, but I think it is like a beautiful ignorance to grow up thinking my mom's going to be healthy forever.
Right.
To thinking, I didn't have anything to worry about. It's not until I got older until I realized, like, my mom and dad did have a hard time paying bills sometimes, or like, me going away for like a sporting thing wasn't always as simple as just like, here's money.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of ignorance involved in that and sometimes it's due to age and just, your
I think we can all
life.
sort of relate that, or most of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
Growing up, and you look back now and you get a different relationship as an adult with your parents than you did with a kid. And you sometimes I've even had those conversations, and it's like, hey, this is what actually happened, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay. I didn't see that through the eyes of a 10-year-old.
It's interesting when your parents become human. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's unfortunately the biggest whiplash I got when my mom got sick was like, you're old enough to recognize, like I did neuroscience in months. So like you pick up things where it's like you recognize that, oh, maybe mom was struggling with something, or like maybe my dad was struggling with something, or my brother. Like you kind of pick up little things, but you kind of, for me anyways, I also don't always acknowledge that they're like other human beings with like a conscience, like, they have stresses and they have struggles. And I don't know why I never really pieced that together. And again, maybe I was just ignorant. Like that I can just chalk it up to being ignorant, but nothing humbled me or snapped me back to reality quicker than my mom calling me to tell me she had cancer. You know what I mean? Like, and it's weird. Like, it's such a weird, because I remember that day, it was like one of those days where it was way too good to be true. And I even said that, like, I was like sitting down watching a TV show. I'm pretty sure I was like eating ice cream. Like, I don't think it was a stressful day. And then I got that phone call, and it's like time decided for a minute to like not move. You know what I mean? Like, everything was frozen for a good while. And it didn't make sense. Even when she came home that night, like, it just didn't make, because I was like, this is my mom. You know what I mean? Like she tried really hard to be healthy. I'm sure looking back at it, there's things you could have done. Like, I mean, I gained so much weight. There's things I could have done or couldn't have ate. So it became this like really harsh reality that life is just hard. And I've just been really lucky up to that point. And I had things happen to me that I thought were really difficult. And I go to therapy. So like I got to talk about it. But I don't think anything will ever be as difficult as this. Because when it first happened, I was pretty convinced that grief is like this evil monster. Truthfully. And I know that, again, can be very like cringy or like, I don't know what the word would be, predictable maybe, something to say, where like grief is like this awful thing under the bed. But as I just mature and I learn more about it, like grief really is a beautiful thing, because some people don't grieve.
No,
and that kind of like speaks volumes when I hear that.
Right. What do you think that is?
I'm starting to believe, and maybe this will change in 5 years, because like I said, it's changed since my mom's been sick. But like, I do believe that grief is just love. Like, it's just love I have that can't go anywhere. Oh. Like, it's like really like, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter, you know, how much I want her back, she won't come back.
Yeah.
And like that has struggled with me in a lot of things. I've tried to hold on to pieces of her as much as I could, and having to let those go, whether they were like in relationships I had or even in like the comfort of like jobs and things like that. Cause it's kind of funny how grief shows up. It shows up in change a lot. When I got the job at Verafin, or when I started making this app, and I received, it sounds awkward for me to say, but like I received some recognition for it. I've had interviews. I mean, I'm on this podcast right now, and it's awkward because that just instantly comes back to me missing my mom. Cause like, I don't want to sound dramatic, but like I probably wouldn't have had those massive changes in my life if my mom didn't pass. Yeah. And that's a really awkward sentence, because it's really hard for me to say my life has, because I shouldn't say that, but it's hard for me to be like, my life has gotten better since my mom passed. But it's not really that. It's like, I can't,
it's not that.
You know what I mean? I can't talk to her about it.
I feel like it could be your outlet for love now.
Yeah.
You said you didn't have a place for your love to go. It sounds like this almost directly translates.
Yeah, I mean, my world has kind of just always been a little more sideways ever since my mom has passed.
So tell us more about the app, because I don't know a whole lot about it. And what exactly does the app do, and what's it provide for people as an outlet for someone?
So to be honest, it's changed so much that it kind of started off as like just a journaling app. There's some features we were going to add, like helping you find therapists, because sometimes that's pretty daunting. So it kind of lets you disconnect so that you can find them on your own pace in your own way, and find a therapist that you think is right without Google searching everything. And then it's kind of evolved a little bit to almost the same breath as like a workout app, to be honest, where you do journal and you check in with yourself, but you kind of keep yourself accountable, because mental health is very difficult, but you also have to be very, I wouldn't say disciplined, because that's definitely a part of it, but you have to be very intentional. When you have anxiety, and like I spoke this with my therapist, she's like, you know, like, it's okay to have anxiety. You shouldn't live your life pretending like it's not going to happen. How are you going to respond to it? Like, how's your intention going to be when you respond to it? Are you going to let it drive you? Are you going to let it push you places? Because I have before, and then it's led me down roads where I regret, where I hate that person. Like, I hate that version of me. So like, that was a real eye-opening conversation I had with her. So like, the app right now, we kind of have 3 branches of it, let's say. So there's the branch where people like us can use it. And then
there's everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's nobody. Where you can have a journal and you can check in with yourself, but you can also have almost like a scrapbook where you can invite people that you're close to or people you don't want to see. It depends how private or public you want to make it. And you can share stories about them. You can share pictures, videos, have it all in one spot. So it's not very difficult to find. I find a lot of these apps that let you share these things aren't always very intuitive. So like if I wanted to see pictures of my mom or videos, you can have them on my phone, of course, but there are people that have pictures of my mom that I've never seen, and it would be fantastic that if they posted them somewhere, I didn't have to go asking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
Those little simpler ideas. We're also making it because in my mom's honor, she loved children. She thought that they were God's gift, and we are trying to make it so that it's a little bit safer for kids, because kids do go to therapy when traumatic events happen. And I've spoken through a lot of therapists about it, and I don't want to get like too intense with it, but they say one of the things they do is like they're kind of nervous to talk because they do have parents. So like the parents might ask them, "Oh, what did you talk about in therapy?" And then that can be awkward and be uncomfortable. And sometimes they kind of communicate through how they play. So the app is trying to make a really safe place, almost like a direct link with their therapist, so that if they are really struggling with something and they don't want to say it because they don't want their parents to say something after, they can type it on the app. Or like we're working on having, I don't want to say games, but for lack of a better term, games that the therapist can see that they're playing that might give them an idea of what could be happening or what they're thinking anyway.
Interesting.
That's a brilliant tool.
And then the third branch is for seniors, because seniors suffer as much as anyone else. Mm-hmm. And technology is not easy for me, let alone someone who, I kind of grew up with it. Like I kind of grew up as it was being invented type thing.
Yeah, I like to say I was raised by machines.
Yeah.
Because I really was.
Sounds cooler.
The Nintendo is a
definitely
machine.
Sounds cooler, yeah.
I spent so much time on TV.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I don't imagine, like my dad's 73 and the icons on his computer are this big, and he has 3 of them, and they're the only 3 he will ever use. So why don't we make something this for seniors that they might be struggling with something, they might need to talk, and let's make technology easy. It's not like it's not possible.
Absolutely.
Right? So why don't we just make things easy? So like that's some of the saddest stories I hear are when people say like they've lost their partner. They would lost their husband or their wife, and now they have their kids, but their kids have their own lives, and they feel alone, and they go to bingo and they go to these things, but they still kind of feel alone. So like, why don't we have this? And why can't they have an outlet where people can share with them? And there's a lot of nuances to it. I know I'm sounding pretty vague and open, but that's mainly because there is a lot of avenues that I could talk about, and it gets kind of boring. But in long short of it, it just gives them a secure place where they don't have to go on Facebook and get.
So is it like a social app where you can go? So it's kind of like LinkedIn for professionals.
So sort of.
This is kind of like where you go to share your
stories.
It's
as social as you want it to be.
Yeah.
I say that because I go back to the post I seen that kind of helped make me want to make an app about the person in New York going through it. You can share those things and it can be as public as you want, just like a Facebook status. Or you can just keep it to yourself or keep it to your small group of people, and you control that so that it's not just a randomized set of eyes looking at it. Because that was the thing I think it is fantastic to be vulnerable, and I think it is I think it is a strong thing to do, to be vulnerable. But the only real issue with vulnerability is that you can be hurt, and it opens you up to people who are saying awful things. Yeah. I remember at my mom's funeral, an older gentleman, he's a really nice guy, but he came up and he said, "At least you had a mom." And he didn't say it in some malicious, hurtful way where he was like, "You're not being grateful," or he just was being honest. He was like, my mom died when I was 10. He's like, "At least you had a mom." And I think about that all the time, because he was like to be honest, he seemed like a very nice person, but he was also trying to quote unquote help in the way he knew how, without recognizing that it could be damaging. Yeah. So why don't we just take that randomization out of it and just have the only people that you want to have? And if you want no one to see, no one needs to see.
Right. And this is still under development, right? The app's
not
public
it's still
yet.
under development. We've made a few pivots, so that kind of takes things longer. But that's kind of it.
You said there's 3 for
Yeah,
three
so
versions. So
I say
back
it's
to-
like the children, the seniors,
Right.
and then kind of everyone in between.
Okay.
Because if you go to therapy, you might be pretty comfortable with using a pen and paper, write stuff down. You might not have people like snooping through things, but maybe you do have something very traumatic that you don't want eyes to see, and you can share that with only your therapist or only yourself. Or if you're very lucky, your friends and family that are trustworthy enough, you can share with them. But at least that way you have control. And the reason why I kind of split in three groups is because children don't have a lot of control in their life, obviously, and seniors, even to an extent, they don't have a lot of control in their life. Like if they're not very mobile or just a lot overall healthy, like they don't have as much freedom as they used to. Where hopefully we have a little bit more freedom, being able to do things and having the control to do those things. So at least this way, it kind of gives you also the privacy to have a meltdown and not feel like everyone, there's going to be someone saying something awful to you.
So other than, and I'm just trying to really wrap my head around this.
Sure.
Other than, you can go in, you can have a journal, you can write out what you're thinking, your thoughts. You can do that probably as frequently as you want. You can post pictures there that help you with whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah.
You can share with very specific people so they can engage with you and work with you, whether it's a therapist or family or friends. Is there any other key component here that you're working on?
Yeah, there's things that where we're talking to therapists and psychologists. We're trying to get, I compare it to taking notes when you go to the gym or when you do any kind of like physical. So like basketball practice I played growing up, like you kind of gauge yourself on one drill on how you previously did in that drill. So as simple as possible, if you go to the gym and you do biceps and you're curling 40 pounds, well then next time you go, are you still curling 40? So like there's a lot of little nuances to kind of keep you moving forward.
So is it set up milestones to help you work through?
Yeah, and then we got therapists and psychologists kind of helping us gauge how we can implement those milestones so that they just become more helpful and they're not just gimmicks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a counselor who's very interested in the idea of the app. Do you have a place where specialists can go to get in touch with you and how they can work with you?
I'm a pretty casual guy, so I honestly just give them my number or like my LinkedIn. Like I don't really care how people reach out to me.
I gotta be honest, I'm kind of following along Michael's lines, train of thought here. It's an emotional. I'm gonna try to take a stab at saying this the way I want to say it. It's an emotional piece of technology that you're developing, and it's easy to get tied into the emotion of it. But from where I'm standing or sitting, I'm thinking, how do you monetize it? And I know that this probably didn't get started from a place of monetization.
No, not at all.
You didn't want to create this to make money.
I still struggle with that frequently.
Yeah.
A lot of it is making money transparently through government funding. The mental health crisis is massive, especially with kids with disabilities and things along those lines. I mean, even adults with disabilities, let's just be honest, especially cognitive disabilities and things along those lines. So there's lots of funding and things like that to help us kind of keep going. I really am wishful that we don't have to monetize it at all. That would kind of be the goal. But we are talking to people about, what kind of groups is it comfortable for? Because without trying to sound harsh, I don't mind charging, like a counseling firm type thing. Or I don't mind charging therapists, let's say, that will sign up under the umbrella. Because then I don't feel like I'm charging the children.
Well, the thing
if
is,
that makes sense.
You look at the value you're bringing. You're going to have a pool of potential customers, and then all the therapist has to do is subscribe to your platform, and then there's the customer.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
It's really advertisement, but
I
ideally
didn't do a
done.
great job of explaining that.
If you could license this like a software to professionals to help them do their job, which are psychologists, counselors, and so on. then they could use it, they could license it and then use it as a tool in the services that they're providing to their customers.
Yeah, that is the ultimate goal. I guess I just get a little like sheepish because I hate the idea of charging someone. For example, the reason why I shouldn't say make this as an excuse, but the reason why I probably answer it the way I do is because one of the first people to reach out to me was he was a really big shot CEO, lots and lots of money, and he said like, why would I invest in people's sadness? And that like really stung me because I was like, I don't want to make money off people's depression. I don't want to make money off people's grief.
And that's not what you're doing. So it's
I think,
unfortunate that
so it was a definitely like it was a tough week because I was like, is that what I'm like? I suffer a lot from just thinking I'm not good enough, especially when it comes to stuff like this. I really struggle with like the imposter syndrome of it all. Of like, why am I doing it? Like, it should be someone else. And then when I got that blowback, I was like, am I doing this for the right? You know what I mean? Like then I was like, oh, this is what people think I'm doing. Because then you're like, oh,
I feel like a lot of us are just faking until we make it.
I'm definitely faking it. The making it part is yet to be seen, but it's definitely faking it. But that is where some of like the not edginess, but concern when people ask me about this stuff because I don't want.
You're worried about the guilt of making money off of this.
Yeah, it
That's
feels
such
awful,
an interesting,
right? It feels
unique problem when starting a business or developing something like an app.
I think it's just because I've worked with, I guess just for sake of it, like I've worked with the public my whole life, and that has been like I've coached little kids, I've coached teenagers. I've worked with teenagers and I've seen them be exploited, like painfully so, whether it's like by their parents or by the work system. Like you see them be exploited that I think it's just so ingrained in me to not do that, to not want to exploit people, especially vulnerable people who are hurting. Like when my mom died, it was one of the worst versions of myself. And I wish I could take that back because I know there are people I've hurt that I can't apologize to. So like, I don't think it would have been hard to take advantage of me, to be honest. I was just kind of lucky. So I don't want to take advantage of anyone else because I think that would just be disingenuous to who my mom was.
I wonder if this could be a not-for-profit app. Is that a thing?
The thing is though is that you don't even really need to take that approach. Whoever says anything else, fuck them.
Yeah.
The thing is that the value you're bringing is for people who are hurting. That's the goal behind it.
And that's what I have to tell myself. But it is sometimes hard to answer that question because I can't help but feel awkward. Like I said this to Mark the other day, the guy I'm working on it with, one of my good friends. And it's like, if you make a lot of money off it, I will feel guilty. There's no question. And then if I fail, it will also suck because it's something like a passion project for my mom type thing. Yeah. So it's like this weird road of feeling not great either way. And like, it's tough because you kind of don't get the freedom to just do whatever you want. Like there's always that risk and the consequence of it. So it's not a hard question to answer because it is technically a tool. That's the whole goal. Yeah. It's just like every fitness app is a tool. It's not, the fitness app itself does nothing for you. You know what I mean? I've worked out, it might not look like it, but I've worked out most of my life. And having the knowledge and all that stuff is fantastic. But there's no point of knowing how to work out and how to eat if you don't apply it.
Right.
So that's the bonus of the whole app is like, it can help. I know it can help. But Absolutely. If you don't apply it, it's the same thing as just having the knowledge and just letting it sit there. Or having the knowledge and going and doing something about it.
And the main thing is you want to make sure at a bare minimum the app has to pay for itself. You know, it's not free to get this up and running.
That's the other issue. You don't get the freedom of just trying as many things as you want because unfortunately life costs money.
Yeah.
Just hosting something on AWS, for example, is going to cost you X amount of dollars a month. Right? Yeah. So I mean that has to be paid for. And it's not that it has to be paid for out of the pockets of people who are hurting. Exactly. You're providing a valuable service.
There are a lot of avenues you can check. Like the government's doing their best to help with the mental health crisis, and hopefully you find investors that want to help with the mental health crisis because there are rich people who have money.
There are lots, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you said. I'm not trying to take it. I don't want to be transparent to take anyone's money. I just want to make the best product I can possibly make so that it's
the
useful.
other side of this is not to not trying to push you into saying you need to
No, of course.
be evil and charge a lot of money for this and all this.
Yeah.
But there's a balance here. I
Yes.
think that because if you don't somehow create a revenue stream, that this app and this tool
Yeah.
is not going to get the opportunity to help
Yeah.
the people that you want it to help.
Well, that's exactly it. Like there's always a causality of things. There's always a consequence to what you do. And sometimes the consequence is you have to spend money, and sometimes you don't want to, but to start anything, you have to invest your time and your energy. And unfortunately, like you said, like AWS and security is a massive thing for these apps.
That's what I was just about to say. So obviously, you know me, you know I'm big into security.
Yes.
And I think one of the first things we talked about was my main concern was this is a phenomenal app with phenomenal potential, but people are pouring out some of their darkest and deepest things.
Honestly, on the dark web, which is a fun term to say out loud, one of the highest selling things are mental health. So
because there's people out there who will take advantage of them.
Well,
I
they
guess
love
that's-
to blackmail certain people. And
That's
that's a
when you're
real
most
thing.
vulnerable.
That's a
would
real
think.
thing. So we're going through every kind of avenue to figure out exactly the safest way. Is it safest just to have it on your device, just like it's stored on your device, or is there a better way to find out in AWS if there's like a really secure network that we can have that, hopefully is uncrackable?
It's
But
gonna want to be
those things, like you have to think about all that, because you don't have the option not to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those things are not cheap. Privacy has never been cheap, and it's not starting now. And as far as I know, it's probably not going to continue to be cheap.
I do feel like the best revenue stream for this is probably government funding. Also, not a government employee or a representative.
Okay.
So it's easy for me to say that.
No, they're so far that seems to be the best avenue for us, anyways.
Yeah.
Especially for what we want and like where we're going with it. Helping like government employees as well, because I've worked with the government and sometimes it's a pretty stagnant job where it feels like you're not going anywhere.
Right.
So there's lots of avenues, to be honest. We went to it was funny, me and Mark went to a Bounce Health presentation where they presented all the companies underneath their umbrella. Mark was like, they could use our app, and that's kind of how we looked at it. It's not a thing for one person. It's just a tool, and we have to make it as specific as we can, just to help people feel as comfortable and just to help them to move forward. I think that's the most important thing, because when you deal with grief, and it's not just grief, but any kind of mental health, like it's really easy to get stuck in that trench. Like it's super easy. It's so easy for me to sometimes just want to give up, because the only person I really want to share it with isn't here, and that staggers me frequently, because sometimes it's like I said, you get a big accomplishment and the only person you want to tell, you kind of have to tell them in your head, and and maybe I'm looking at it through the wrong lens. I don't know, but it sucks. Whatever lens I am looking through, it sucks.
Yeah.
I hear you there.
So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. That's my approach. Is I don't have all the answers. The app isn't going to have all the answers, but hopefully it helps you take one foot out of the trench and just start moving forward, whatever that may be. Maybe you got to crawl for a little bit. Like that's how I felt I was doing, but it gets you somewhere.
Let me ask you, I think that it's going to have, I'm just trying to think critically about this.
Yes.
I'm an advocate for people talking, going counseling, seeing whoever, whether it's a counselor, therapist, psychologist, whoever you need. I'm a big advocate for people going and talking. There's a lot of people out there, because I openly talk about this.
Yep.
And I think everybody needs some help. Everybody.
Fair.
There's a lot of resistance. People put up a lot of resistance, and there's some people who I'm like, hey, why don't you go talk to somebody? Why don't you book an appointment? And they're just like, no, why not? Won't talk about it and can't get through. I'm wondering if your app's going to receive similar resistance, or maybe because it's less private and it's not an actual real person, it's an app, and nobody has to know about it, if it'll add a comfort level.
Sometimes I think so, but I mean the app is called Talk to Me, so the whole goal, truthfully, the elevator pitch is just someone to get something talking.
Yeah.
I don't think it really matters how you talk. I don't think it matters how you approach or how you show up to therapy or how you show up to help, as long as you show up. You know, in the fitness world, like a classic saying is like a bad workout is better than no workout. Yeah. And that kind of just implies though, like it's better just to show up and crawl through something than to not show up at all.
That's right.
So if our app, you know, just is mumbo, it's just ranting, it's just venting. There's no direction for the first little bit for this person showing up. That might be all they need to be like, maybe I can go speak to someone face to face, or maybe I can try it over Zoom where it's less personable, but I still have someone listening to me. And then, you know, you go from there. You figure out if therapy is right for you, or if you need other avenues, whether it's self-help books, even just something to get you moving. Cause that's really all it is. Cause like I find that, especially like in school, like it's really hard to do the mundane stuff. It's really hard just to go home and do your homework or go home and study. I needed a purpose. I needed something to drive me forward. Yeah. And ironically, sometimes just finishing it wasn't a good enough purpose. Or like, you know, they always say, well, the degree is the purpose. I was like, yeah, well, I don't care. So that's not a great attitude. I'm aware. But sometimes that just doesn't do it for people. That's right. So why don't we just do something that might work? And if there's resistance, that could be a good thing.
Yeah.
I've kind of looked at that.
The beautiful thing is I see it as a stepping stone process. You know, this app sounds like it's going to be not only phenomenal in the beginning stages of grief or trauma, and then also connecting them with a professional, but it's really going to just get the ball moving, you know, in an easy, private way.
The thing is, too, I said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it till I die. I was pretty ignorant growing up. I had a lot of really easy things in my life. Like I had a family who loved me. I had friends that cared about me, and I didn't have to worry as much about fitting in as I thought I did. And I tried so hard to kind of just be something I wasn't all the time. And now looking back at it, like I still have friends from grade 2. I still am in communication with them. Like we still talk. I'm 31 now, so like, you know, that's long enough time. But a lot of people don't have that. And why are they, I shouldn't say punished, but why are they left out because of that? Why can't we just make it easier? And even if you're not comfortable talking to a therapist, sometimes you are comfortable talking to your friend or yourself on the internet. And I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, blogs for a long time were like the thing people did for, you know, a side hustle. Yeah. And why not?
Yeah,
it's kind of my attitude. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No. That's kind of my attitude towards this. Is a lot of people can come at it through a quote unquote like a negative light, but I kind of just believe in the why not of it all. Why can't I make a change? Why can't I develop something that might help? I'm not saying I will. I have no idea. I obviously am wishful and I'm hopeful, but I think we grow up. And I apologize if this is like a bit of a side tangent, but like we grow up, like I anyways grew up like dreaming pretty big. And at some point the world kind of like stops you from doing that. But I don't really know why. And sometimes they hit you with like, it's not logical. Like, of course, everyone who, you know, touched a basketball, like I wanted to be Allen Iverson. Didn't happen. But like, you know, it did embed a lot of like a lot of like discipline into me. Like if I wanted to be good at something, I had to practice. That means I had to acknowledge my weaknesses. And that kind of helped moving forward because of course I'm biased towards this. So I talk to a lot of people who, you know, say it's a horrible idea because it's great. Because when they hate something, they usually have a lot of reasons for why they hate it. And then I get to hear something and negative feedback. I don't know, looking back at it, I don't really know if it is negative. Sometimes it sucks to hear, don't get me wrong, but it kind of helps us really blossom something else into the app. That's why I said there's been so many pivots, because it was just a very simple, stupid idea of like, hey, why don't we get people talking to themselves? And then it kind of turned into more and more. And of course, the more mental health professionals I've talked to, they've had more ideas. I've talked to entrepreneurs who are unfathomably rich, and they've had ideas where like, this sucks, like this won't work. But then in them saying that, the next sentence is, this is how we make it better. And I'll write that down and walk away with it. And,
take that.
And that's, I think, the whole why not. I think that's just a great question to ask yourself, because life changes rapidly. My mom was sick in December and passed away 4 months later. Or sorry, it was honestly, I apologize because I don't remember the exact date because it's all a blur.
Yeah.
But it was only 4 months. So like in 4 months, my life went from having a mom to not having a mom. And like, that's pretty quick.
That's great.
You know what I mean? It's pretty heavy. So if life can change that drastically for me, I'm sure it has changed drastically for other people. And maybe some people didn't have the luxury I did of growing up a little ignorant, a little, you know, my parents don't fight, or,
Yeah.
you know, I have friends to call if I want to go out, or I have friends. I wasn't really a natural at basketball. I had friends who helped me, taught me, like literally taught me drills, taught me how to dribble. Like, very lucky, right? So I have to acknowledge that that's not always the case. So why can't we make something for them? Why can't we make something?
So for these people in your app, and I'm just curious and listening to you and how this works, and what Michael said about a like it's almost like a stepping stone, an entry point into therapy, whether it's self-therapy or if people are not comfortable. Is it set up in a way that it can guide you through a process? Because I think a lot of people, and I've struggled with stress and anxiety over the past few years and the pandemic stuff. That's like a broken record, but it's true.
Yeah, of course.
It happens. And I think that speaking from my own personal experience with just my own stress in life and anxiety, you don't know where to start.
Yeah, it's tough. Especially when you feel everything.
If I had this, I can open it, and it's kind of like step 1.
Exercise.
Write this down. Step 2. Do this.
Yeah.
It can be a bit of a guide, or is it just kind of like a free-for-all?
I apologize because I'm speaking pretty vaguely on some of it, but that's just because of the amount of changes we do. But yeah, that's 100% incorporated already.
Okay.
Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I took this idea from a lot of these like workout apps that just tell you what to do. Like, I don't want to work out today. Well, here's something you can do. Don't think about it. Just go do it. Yeah. And in mental health, it translates a little bit differently because you can't just be like, you're anxious, go for a run. But it does translate a little differently. But that is the baseline stream of it. It's like, oh, you're really, really stressed out. Well, yesterday you felt like a 10. You were 10 out of 10. Why was that? And then why do you feel super stressed out today? And let's work through it. Whether it's like little prompts or things like that. Yeah, that's 100% incorporated into the app. And that's kind of why we are going through the whole mental health professional avenue, because we want as many prompts that we think are applicable to what people may go through in the run of a Monday to Friday. That they can, you know, I'm really stressed out on Monday, but I'm usually pretty relaxed on Friday. Like, that's the trend they're seeing. So how can we kind of find a balance? You know, I like the saying, life is a lot like a heartbeat, like it's a lot of ups and downs, and the moment it goes flat, you're not there anymore. I kind of like that because that's pretty accurate to what life is. It is a lot of really ups and downs, and if it went flat, you might not enjoy it as much. So how can we figure out a way to get you through the ups and understand how you got up there, the acceptance of climbing that mountain or that hill, or what analogy you want to use, and then also the acceptance of being in that valley, again, whatever analogy you want to use, because it's going to happen. So let's make it less scary and more attainable to get through that, whatever it may be.
I got to tell you, the idea of mimicking a workout app is a brilliant idea, because working out is fundamental to mental health. When I got really down after I left my last position, and I really just felt confused, and I was wondering, why am I doing this job? Am I going to become like the people who run this organization?
Yeah.
I was thinking,
I get it.
I was thinking, I don't really want that.
I kind of look at it as like a triangle. So I'm not the leading engineer on anything, so you know, but it's a strong structure. And if you looked at it like mental, physical, and spiritual, if one of those things are broken, it's not a great thing to hang your hat on. So why don't we just make it so that it works together? Why don't we have? Why isn't there a place where you can go on your phone and maybe get away from some of the noise, or put some of the noise on your head on your phone? Like, it's supposed to be your phone, so why don't we make it useful for you? Yeah. So that's kind of like where I'm looking at it from. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Right. I think that's a task that, you know, someone else can go for. I'm just trying to make sure that the wheel keeps moving, and hopefully people can figure out how to move it.
Yeah. You gonna say?
So, Sam, we have a recurring segment on this show where we ask our guests to provide an actionable takeaway. So something that you might have done in your life that helped you take that first step in getting over some grief and some trauma.
Honestly, relentlessly abandoning hurry. I know that kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but
It's like hurry up and take your time.
yeah, like it's simple. I kind of wanted to rush to get to every place in my life, and by rushing to get to every place in my life, I forgot a lot of things on the way. And it's like really simple acts, like I'll actually just drive the speed limit. You know what I mean? If I have to be somewhere on time, I'll actually leave on time, which is
What?
crazy for me. Yeah, no.
Ryan,
If
you hear that?
if I'm not 10 minutes late, it's concerning. And if I'm 10 minutes early, like you can ask if there was a fire in my house, because it's weird. But it's relentlessly abandoning the idea that you have to get somewhere. Stop telling yourself like you have to always move forward, when sometimes you just have to take your time and like I said, crawl. Sometimes that's really a necessity.
Yeah.
And then you kind of learn things. Like I was when the app happened and I was getting, you know, these like interviews, and I was getting these people messaging you, like you wanted it out right away. You wanted it, but like looking back at it, that would have been probably the downfall of it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know enough. I was still struggling with my grief, especially because I just got a new job. Everything was happening. My life was pretty hectic, and if I put it out then and there, even if I put it out within like the first 6 months, I don't think it would have at all been a representation of what I wanted it to be. I don't think it would have been helpful at all. I don't think it would have been a tool at all. I think it would have been a paperweight of an app.
I think the takeaway from there is that you have to enjoy the process
Yeah.
of building something. You have to
Yeah.
enjoy the process of starting something, of creating something.
Yeah.
And you have to,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
sometimes we focus too much on the end product.
Absolutely.
Getting it done. Getting the business
Getting
running,
somewhere.
making money, or getting the product finished and getting it launched, and getting
Yeah.
it's good to have the goals and work towards it. But I do feel that
I agree completely.
and
I agree
I'm
completely.
guilty for this.
Yeah.
But I'm learning as I'm getting older.
Well,
I guess.
I do it. I even
Slow
do it
down.
for like work, like, you know, just waiting for Friday to show up.
Yeah.
And I've tried to really stop that attitude. Just being like, well,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it's silly things. Like I'm just grateful to have a job. Sometimes it's just that. Or
Right.
like I'm grateful that I can hang out with the people I hang out with for my job. And I know those things are really small, but it's just trying to not wish my life away, wish my weeks away, wish my days away. Because
Exactly.
that's where I was. You know, when I was in high school, I couldn't wait to finish. When I was in Mon, I couldn't wait to finish. And then it's like
Well, see, isn't that
all these things.
You're
Like,
just noticing that what you're saying is exactly what I noticed.
yeah.
And that I'm happy I noticed it in my 30s
Exactly.
and not my 40s or my 50s.
Yeah.
It's like, hang on.
Yeah.
Just enjoy this process.
Yeah,
Enjoy
I
this
think
process.
it's like, it's funny because, like I said, I've talked to, you know, big people, and they always have these like really, really big ideas. And if I followed their ideas, I probably would have had it out sooner. But with the hindsight of it all, it's a good thing that I quote unquote did fail at. It was a quote unquote I didn't agree with them, or they didn't agree with me, and I think that ended up being this blessing that I didn't think it would, and it was frustrating. Like, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and lie about it. It was frustrating to have people invest in you and then pull out right away, or pretend that they're going to invest in you, which is even worse. You know, that's an awful feeling, but I think it opened my eyes to the whole idea of it all, of just you want to make a tool, and a useful one, not something that's just for fun, or you're getting it out just because you quote unquote got attention. Like that's disingenuous if you ask me. And I think the world is just so quick to push you to hurry.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as you finish high school, know exactly what
or
you're
it's
doing.
society. It's always like, okay,
How do
achieve
you,
this,
like,
achieve this.
I
achieve this.
always question, like, how are you? Like, I'm 31 and I make this app. Like, let's say I make it and it's completely done and it's out in the world. What do I do next?
Then what?
You know what I mean? Like, why am I quote unquote pigeonholed into just being in one thing? Why can't I do something else?
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? And I know sometimes that sounds a little, it sounds a little just like egregious, I guess, because it's like, you know, people always say like stay in your lane and things like that. But I don't think changing your career or or adapting to life, I think that's something everyone should be equipped with. You shouldn't, I don't think, especially now where I work in a massive company, they promote you moving around. They want you to move around. And I think that's something, like, why wasn't that promoted when I was in high school? To tell me you don't have to go to Mon right away. Right. Or you don't have to, attempt this thing that you have no idea you want to do. And that was true. Yeah. I had no clue. Like, I mean, I still don't. I'm 31, and like, if the app's super successful, that's fantastic. And if it isn't, well, at least I tried. Like, what else can I do? Because it kind of gives you the confidence of failing.
See, what you just said there is huge. Because I've always said I'd rather try it.
Yeah.
And fail than live with a what if. Yeah. What if would drive me crazy?
It's funny because like when we're going through this, they're like, you can't be afraid to hear no. I was like, I don't care about hearing no. I'm so more worried about me just not finishing it. Like that's the only thing I'm concerned about. Like, you can say no as much as you like at this point. I just want to get it done in a genuine way, in a way that reflects my mom, in a way that reflects the way she helped people. My friend said this to me, and I never forget it. My mom used to always ask, how are you doing? But she asked it in a way that she actually wanted to hear the answer. So I'd like an app that asks you how you're doing and
gives a shit.
You're right? Yeah. Because it's, we go through, we got to pivot sometimes. Like, Talk to Me is owned by a sex line. So
wait, what?
Oh yeah,
you gotta back up.
That's my pivot. Yeah,
wait, back up.
Oh no,
what just happened?
I don't know.
Yeah,
we're no man's land.
Because we went to make it into like our brand type thing, but it was already taken. And and it's pretty funny. I think it's hilarious. I don't think it's. Yeah,
I know what's going on now. I was really confused there for a second.
No, yeah. I should have probably weaseled that in a bit better, but
no, that was good.
I just think it's I think like people were like really stressed out about it. I think it's kind of funny. We can cross pollinate, man. Maybe they're really sad on one time and then they come to us, or maybe they feel great and then they leave. Like, I don't know.
So does that mean you're going to rebrand? Are you still leaving?
We're not 100% sure. I mean, at this moment, we're not. But like, I'm not against rebranding it at all. I mean, it's, when it comes down to it, it's just a name. It doesn't stand for anything other than what we make it stand for. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And going back to the business side of things, do you know if there's any competitors that offer something similar for grief and trauma?
Not really. I could be blind to it. I don't know. But when we did our research on it, Better Health is usually the one that comes up, where it's just an application where they can talk to a therapist, and there's more to it than that, of course. But I don't want to.
You just need to be like, but they're no good.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
They suck. No, they don't know. No.
If it's not,
they sell your data.
Yeah. It's not Better Health.
Their security is the worst.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, truthfully, like, I think there should be competitors. Yeah. That's not, like, I don't know why we live in a world where it's like, if you have a competitor, that's an awful thing. Mm-hmm. If you have a competitor, you're probably doing something right. Mm-hmm. And there's enough room for everybody.
What a unique conversation this is turning into. I don't care about revenue. I don't care if there's competitors.
Well, I think we're just stuck in a really weird world. Yeah. Like I believe that. Like, I mean, they told us to stay in our house for 2 years, and if they're right or wrong, that's a completely different conversation. But like that's the world we lived in.
They were wrong.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. But like that's the world we lived in. Yeah. That's just the truth. So like, it is a really weird world.
Wild thing.
The think that competition doesn't make you better goes against everything you believe growing up. Like,
I think naturally people just want to have how wonderful would it be to have a monopoly?
Of course.
But you're right.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that's normal, but growing up and being successful in a sport or being successful in anything that I was remotely successful in was because there was competition, because my friend was really good. I wanted to be better than him. That's right. My brother was really good. I wanted to be better than him. Or, it's just the silly things. Like, even like weightlifting when you're a kid, it's like, he does this, so you want to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's just that, like, I think comparison can be very evil because you can get stuck in that loop of comparing yourself. But I don't think competition is evil at all. I think it can help. It can help rebrand you. It can help change you in positive ways. I think there's a positive, negative to everything, but I don't think competition is seen as evil. I think it's a ridiculous thing to think, because I don't know why. I think the monopoly, like you said, is It's like a scary thing to have someone monopolize health.
Well, it's illegal.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think Meta
yeah.
right now is getting sued because of their ownership over Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to see massive corporations have all the power.
Yeah, and
I think
that's it's a scary place when that can happen.
it is scary.
And I think it'd be really weird. And like, truthfully, I think it would be really weird if I was doing this for revenue or because I think we have way too much of that. We have way too much of that where we have these people who are only in it to better themselves and to move forward and to, like, I don't want to sound like I'm calling people evil, but to leave other people behind. I don't understand how that makes us better in any way.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
like,
look at
I'm
our
someone.
society.
Well, I'm someone who struggled. I always needed help. I was very emotional growing up. And again, maybe that was just because my life was pretty easy and I didn't think it was, but I was really emotional growing up. And if I didn't have people to lean on, if I didn't have friends, if I didn't have family, if I didn't have my faith, if I didn't have all that stuff, I genuinely, I'm sure you hear that, but I don't know if I would be here. Whether or not that means, making this app or whether that means just, here as a living being. I don't know. I really don't.
Well, getting a little deep into it, but it's everything that happens in your life. Kind of shapes you and shifts
Of course,
you.
of course.
It creates a pivot point where, okay, this happened, so I went this direction. This happened, so I went this direction.
Exactly.
I think that's just a natural process of things.
Yeah, and I mean, growing up super emotional, you sometimes just think the worst all the time, and especially for me, like comparison was always the worst thing because I just never thought I was good enough.
Well,
But like when I look back at it, that's also what drove me to quote unquote be good enough. And of course, I wish I could have realized that in the time, but you're 12 or 13, you don't really have that bandwidth.
you ever just stop and think? Because I do. Man, I'm super happy when I was growing up. Facebook didn't exist.
Oh, yeah,
Instagram didn't
yeah,
exist.
yeah.
MySpace was kind of there at the end of it.
Yeah.
No, I'm unbelievably embarrassed of my younger self. Yeah. No, we're pretty lucky in that regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just think
All the data's out now about how damaging social media apps are to the younger generation.
it's funny that has to be a conversation of like, of course it's damaging. I mean, how could it not be?
They're just catching up with
I remember-
what we know.
I remember I worked with kids and they were teenagers and they said to me how they hate Instagram because like this person's life seems so and so, but like I didn't say nothing and they were just like, but yeah, I don't delete it because like I still scroll on it, I still want it, and I was like, man, that's a sticky loophole to be stuck in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I hate it, but I can't get out of it. I was like, that sounds like an addict.
Yeah,
And
that is an
like
addiction.
as someone who's
Exactly.
like been addicted to certain things, it's kind of terrifying because there is no, I wouldn't say security, but there is no real guidelines on how to handle it because we're all learning it as we go.
Yeah.
Like I 100% didn't think Facebook was evil when I first got it. You know what I mean? Same thing. Like I think there was MySpace before it. You don't think of that as like some predatorial website. You just like look what I posted or something. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The
And
thing is-
then it just snowballs into something
That's right.
tragic, and that's
The thing is, it's a tool, and good people are going to use it, and bad people are going to use it.
we've talked about that, about how you can give someone a hammer and that doesn't mean they're just going to use it to nail something. Like you can make it as like succinct as possible. You can make it as quote unquote useful for the thing as you want, but there's always going to be outliers
Right.
in society,
So
whether it's not like how they use it or how they misuse it, things along those lines. You can't control. And if you could, I mean, I think Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram would be very, very different if you could control it all.
That's right.
Well, that's the thing. As you know, or actually, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I'm developing a streaming platform that Talk to Me will be hosted on,
Right.
as well as a bunch of other independently produced content. But my main goal is to make it an anti-social media platform. So something I do is I sit and I think, what is a social media platform, and how do I, and what factors do I want to remove from it? And direct messaging, I think, is one of the worst things we can have.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially during COVID. You'd see people post stuff, and then just the access people had to comment whatever they wanted to comment. Like, I don't know. I used to see people talk about how hard their life was, but then someone underneath it would be like, well, this happened to me and I'm fine. And you're like, I don't think that was the purpose. Like that wasn't what they were trying to do.
And let me even clarify further. Commenting on a post, absolutely, it's got its dangers, and it's certainly going to affect the poster. But I mean the ability to directly message somebody,
almost like a text, basically.
Exactly. And so never before has complete strangers had immediate access to anyone.
Yeah, it's a very accepted concept now, but like realistically, it is very odd that you can post something and thousands of people see it almost instantly, depending on like your following or who you are. Yeah. It's really accepted and it's become the norm, but like it is really weird. It is really weird that your family pictures are now seen by thousands of people just because.
And not even that now. Well, we know, thanks to Edward Snowden, that they're just being saved.
Yeah.
Everything's being saved all the time, everywhere.
It's like I said, I think it's just a weird world with a lot of chaos into it, and it's hard. Life is hard. Like I remember, I don't know what I heard it on before, but it's like you have to choose your difficult. Like being overweight is difficult. Being in shape, it's also difficult. Like being sick is difficult. It's all kind of hard. You just have to choose which one you want to really tackle.
I like that.
I never heard that before.
I really like that. Choose your difficult.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, you look at it, and my mom passing was very hard, and the grief that comes with it was very hard. But I could choose to either figure out what I was feeling, figure out, it's going to be a part of me, so I can accept it and start, I wouldn't say evolving, but just adapting to it, like learning about it, like why am I feeling this, and move forward. Or I could have stayed in that grief forever. It seemed like the easy thing, but that was also hard. Being sad all the time was very difficult. Being in your bed all the time was very difficult. Not having the energy to do anything to care about yourself, it was difficult. It might not be a conscious difficult, like, walking up a hill is more of a conscious decision, but it was definitely difficult. So you kind of have to pick which one you want. Do you want the difficult that kind of gets you moving? Or do you want the difficult that you're already in, that you kind of just became accustomed to, you got used to?
That's interesting. I always tell my kids, life's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Life's going to be hard.
Yeah.
You got to go through it. You got to clean your room because when you're older, you're going to clean your house.
Yeah.
Life's hard. These are the things you have to do now to almost get used to the idea that life's hard. And I've never thought about it in the sense that, choosing your difficult. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, like
no matter what you do, it's going to be difficult.
I mean, I still am overweight, but like I was really big a little while ago. And like, people, like that was really hard. Like it was hard to enjoy things I used to enjoy, whether it's sports, basketball, working out. Like that stuff was very difficult. Even like going in public, knowing that like the things I used to wear, I used to be confident in, all of a sudden and that became difficult. Like that became hard. And the hard is different because like it was more anxiety filled. It was more what if, and like all of a sudden I started caring what people thought about the way I looked. But like losing weight, it's also hard. People say it isn't, but I think those people are blissfully ignorant because it just is hard. It's so much easier to eat a hamburger than it is to be very strict with your diet.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to not go to the gym than it is to go to the gym. But both avenues are difficult. You just have to pick which one that you're okay with. And
I love it because it also makes the alternative easier. You're like, and something that came up for us before, possibly on the podcast, is a person won't change until, what was it?
Oh, that's what I've always said.
Yeah, say it. What is it?
Now I'm gonna try to dig up that in my mind.
It was beautiful though.
It's it's along the lines of change is difficult, and you won't change until where you are becomes more difficult than change itself.
Yeah. I always I'm not sure if this is a good way to think about it, but I always think about it like an object in motion stays in motion because it's if you're moving, that's still difficult, but like at least you're moving because so is staying still. Staying still is very difficult. Have you ever like unplugged everything?
Actually, it's funny you say that. I just
tough.
did that.
Yeah,
I just came back from a 4-day enlightenment intensive retreat where we didn't have cell phones.
Fun.
We didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
We had 8 people there, and actually, I wanted to mention this to you, so it's interesting you brought it up. we did something called dyading, which is where you sit in front of another person, much like this,
Right.
and for 10-minute intervals for 45 minutes for 8 hours a day,
Oh my god.
somebody asks us one question, and my question was, who am I? And that's what they would ask me, and then I would just dialogue, and the other person's response is to do nothing but hold space for you while you talk. So they don't say a word, they just maintain eye contact and listen, and you just get to talk, and people pour out their deepest things.
I can only imagine that's a faucet that was waiting to be turned on.
Yeah, so it was absolutely wild, and I've talked to a few people down there, like, so did you get enlightened? And the funny thing is, I've had 3 significant insights from it.
Clearly didn't work. Yeah,
absolutely.
No, but I agree. Like, I mean, the relentlessly abandoning hurry, like, to come back to that, like, turning off your cell phone and, like, disconnecting for a minute at a time is difficult.
Yeah.
But you know what's also difficult? Being attached to your cell phone and having a constant, like, comparison, or like it's just, I think it's all tough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all tough. And I think to get better, it's not the same for everyone. Like, there's, like, I'm starting to kind of navigate this whole idea that, like, discipline really does lead you to freedom, because it leads you to being able to say no a lot easier to the things that you know don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I find that discipline is just very difficult. But again, I think also being very fluid is not always easier either.
I guess it comes down to contentment. You have to pick what is you want.
Yeah, totally.
What's going to make you happy?
100% agree with that.
Stick with that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Something I really like that you mentioned already, and it came up for me during this Enlightenment Intensive, was the idea of places having emotions and places having feelings. So you mentioned your cheer for your mom. And actually, there's a reason I don't code here every single day. So every single day I do coding problems to get better at coding. I go to the coffee shop next door. Why? Because I love coffee shops.
Yeah.
So it just makes that process, that discipline, a little bit more enjoyable.
Well, it's fun because, like, now that I've learned a lot about this stuff, like, your brain is really good at compartmentalizing things. So, like, knowing that you go to that coffee shop to do your coding kind of already gets you in the mindset of, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to try to problem solve, and I'm going to try to figure out these problems in whatever language that I'm learning, whether it was Python, Java, whatever it is. It kind of already gets your motor moving, where if everything's in one room, it's kind of hard to get motivated during those things because it is tougher. And when I was trying my best to, like, disconnect, I used to walk this certain path, and this bench every single time. I'd sit down on that bench, kind of turn off my phone for a little bit, and just kind of, like, vegetate, because you have to come up with these ideas. And I felt a lot of stress in school because, like I said, I didn't like it. So it was just a great way because then that became the spot where, like, I would walk every morning with my dog, sit down, chill out there, and walk home. And it just became a really healthy routine. It started off as, like, 1 minute, then I got to 2, got to 3. I think the longest I got was, like, 8, but it got there. You know what I mean? Like, it just got there. It was the same thing with like, I used to run a lot during COVID. Like, I used to run a lot, and I got to the point where, like, if I missed the normal time I'd go for a run, I'd have this, like, built up anxiety, which is probably not healthy. But, like, it got to the point where I was so routinely, like, it was just such a routine that I was like, I think it was 12 o'clock. It was like 12 o'clock, gotta go for a run. And if I missed it because, like, there's a class or a meeting or something like that, I'd be like, ooh, it's just, like, sitting there, and you're kind of just like, and but looking back at it, like, I liked it because on that run, I would honestly come up with more ideas because I hated running. I just also hated being in my house. So it was like, which one do I want to do?
This sounds like a lot of torment.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't want to be here. Oh, but I gotta run.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't like running.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, didn't Huberman just say something, probably not just, but recently, about a part of the brain that expands when you do something you're not looking forward to doing?
Yeah. So I followed Dr. Carolina Leaf for the longest time. I just found her very, like, palpable. It was just easy to listen to. And she mentioned that, like, whenever these things happen, kind of, like, get out of yourself and start moving. And that's honestly why I started running, because it was just easy. Because, you know, being in school online at home is far different than being in school in somewhere. Because you got the drive, right? Like, you're driving to, well, for me, sorry, I live in farther away from Munn. So as you're driving into Munn, you kind of, you got some music going, you're not really thinking, you're kind of just going through the motions, and then you get there. But when you have school at 9 and you wake up at 8:55, you're like, oh no. And you just roll over, you turn on, and like make sure the camera's off, and you just sit there. Half the time I didn't pay attention. So it's like,
It's so funny you said that, because the guy I went to the Enlightenment Intensive with is doing a course via distance now, and he was like, just log into that for me. And we were using his phone's hotspot. He's like, I just got to be in class. I'll watch it again later.
It even got to the point where like I picked spots in my house, and those are the only spots where I'll sit down and do schoolwork. Or like I'll sit down and like now where I work from home, sometimes like I'll sit down and work from home, and like I even have to change those sometimes when I get too lax with it. And I just find it like I used to do sometimes school at just like in my bed, and I was like, this is awful, because now I don't want to move at all. Like now I don't want to do anything from 9 to 5. I'm not doing anything, and then I don't want to get up and do anything. So then it just became this thing of like finding a spot, make sure that spot's a dedicated area for whatever. And your brain's a lot like that too. Like me and Mom used to walk a certain path, and every now and then I'll do that, just if I really want to, quote unquote, feel her or do something that we experienced. My mom used to work down at the RNC. So like when she first passed away, that was one of the drives I used to do. I used to drive around, and it's not going to fix anything, but it did give me comfort, which is what I desperately wanted. And then again, like my mom's chair, I always think about that. Whenever something big happens, sometimes I'll just sit down, and it's positioned in a way. My house isn't massive or anything, but it sees the whole living room and the kitchen table, and it kind of sees everything. And I have this like really, I find it beautiful picture of my mom holding my niece, and my dog is like underneath her, and she's sitting in that chair. And it's just, whenever I sit there, that's the feeling I get. Just because when I took that picture, I didn't know how much longer my mom had. Yeah. So it's like it's humbling in a sense, but it also brings you back and realizes like what you're carrying with you, and it does give you a lot of perspective. It helps me, I should say, be very humble about things. Like I take a lot more pictures now of people that I really care about, than of my family and my friends, and it's not to share it. Just because like it really is a snap in time. Like, it's funny, but it's like you're time traveling, because you can look back at that at any time you want. And that's kind of the feeling that I wanted to incorporate with the app, with the scrapbook, where anybody can just quote unquote time travel back to a day where that person was there, or their feelings were better. Like you said, you went through COVID and you're experiencing a lot of anxiety. Well, it'd be nice to pretend that we weren't. And I've heard a lot of people say that's like disingenuous, that you're blowing off the feelings that you're feeling. But I don't think that's true, because when you grieve, there hasn't been a day, and I would go as far as say there hasn't been an hour where I haven't thought about my mom. So being sidetracked for 15, 30 seconds, I think it's okay, because I will snap back to it very quickly. And I know a few people that unfortunately do really, really suffer with anxiety. And one of the things that they love is a comedy every now and then, because for an hour and a half or however long, they can pretend that it's not crippling. Yeah. And that doesn't work for everybody, obviously. Everyone has a different route they have to take, but I think it's a really silly thing that people can say that, and say it with a straight face, as well as like you're not acknowledging, or you're not handling your emotions. If you feel it, it doesn't really go away. Yeah. I don't want my grief.
I think what we're tapping into here is, whether it be grief or productivity or happiness or sadness, or a variety of infinite different emotions and mix of emotions that you can feel. The space that you put yourself in is extremely important.
I believe so.
Physically, the physical space.
Oh, of course. I believe that 100%, because you can be physically surrounded by people and not be friends with any of them. So I think it's really important where you are physically and mentally, and I think that they can correlate. There are a lot of like newer studies on those. I haven't been able to read them, but they're coming out with those things about how it is important to be deliberate. It is important to be intentional. Absolutely. Truthfully, it is why gyms are so successful, because when you go to the gym, you're doing one thing. Yeah. Right? Like you go to a CrossFit gym, you're doing CrossFit. It's not rocket science, but it really helps. And then the community aspect is massive as well. You go to a gym that has a really nice environment, you go back. Right. You know what I mean? You go to a company that feels really welcoming, that they make you feel like you're valued. All of a sudden, you're a really productive employee. It's not really rocket science to pretend that valuing the place you're in.
No, it's not rocket science.
No, but you know what I mean?
But I think that it's not consciously recognized enough.
No, and that's exactly what I was trying to get at. I don't think people acknowledge it as much as like it's really not a hard thing to be like, oh, I'm valued here. Well, I want to be here. Like, you know what I mean? It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But I don't think I shouldn't say that. I don't think a lot of things care. And I say things because it's not just like companies and organizations, but I think society has gotten a little jaded.
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, sometimes it's just hard to be alive. You can look at all the studies coming out now with teenagers that are like riddled with anxiety and depression and suicide, and that's genuinely terrifying. Because I mean, they turn into adults, right? Eventually, that's what happens, and whether or not it's fair, that's what they're living with, and that's difficult. And sometimes it's because the environment they live in is in their phone. And what are you going to do? You can't take phones away from them because sometimes you need them.
Actually, I think that's kind of
evil.
I think that's kind of the plan is to make it so that no cell phones until a certain age and no social media until after 16.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to put that in.
I couldn't agree more.
I was going to say, I kind of agree with it because looking back at it, like I would not have done well.
Well, it's like what I said earlier. I'm super happy I grew up in a time where that didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with it now still.
We had MSN Messenger, and it was bad enough.
MSN was tough, man.
See the people you want to talk to, see your buddies are online, see what the status is.
I regret.
Busy, online.
I regret the Sam Tobin that was on MSN big time. But I mean, it would have been worse. I mean, I'm 31 and I still struggle with, like, I deleted Instagram, and you kind of like, you start to realize like it consumed way more than I thought it did. Like I thought it was just like a I don't know what the word would be, like a physical space, but then it started consuming like mentally, and then it starts to become a weird ritual of like you close the app and open it again, and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You're like, why did I just do that? And then you just like put your phone away and pretend like it wasn't real. Well, I mean that happens. Yeah, so it's like,
and I'm like, why did I just open it again? I just closed it. I just seen what I seen. Right? What am I doing?
Well, the thing is, it's so easy
I can't
to
imagine
get distracted.
I can't imagine being a teenager and having all those exact same. I mean, your mind is also so impressionable. I mean,
absolutely.
I say like I'm 31. I still think my mind's impressionable. Like Wolverine and Deadpool's coming out, and I'm hooked. You know what I mean? Like that's like my childhood just speaking to me.
Yeah.
So like I can't imagine if I was 16 and you had to check Instagram every couple seconds just to see how your friends were or the people you didn't like were, because that's another thing that social media brings you, is you get to see how successful all the people you don't like are as well.
Yeah.
It's just tough. It's just tough. Life has always been hard, and it just changes. Like I think the lens in which we see it through just changes, because I mean, you go back 100 years and they were going to war when they were 12. That's a lot different than what they're going through now.
So every generation has its challenges.
It just seems that like as humans, we're deeply flawed, and just because it's not one thing, it doesn't mean it's not hurting them in another way. Yeah. And this just happens to be comparison through social media, or
you're absolutely
I guess like the pressure to succeed through life or to know what you're doing. I can't say I'm 100% like on board with what I'm saying there, but like they're clearly going through something. I mean, you're not anxious for no reason. You're not depressed for no reason. You're not suicidal for no reason. Like those things are very intense, especially for someone who doesn't have the tools to deal with it. Because like, I mean, I'm just trying to speak for myself. I wouldn't have been able to. I struggled. Like I said, I was very emotional, and that was enough for me. Like that, I tired myself out. So I can't imagine if I was highly anxious or like struggling with life in that sense. Like
I think a lot of what's
scary.
happening now is the challenge that this generation has is technology. Our grandparents' generation was war, which is extremely severe, and this is a different kind of problem that we're
It's just
facing
a different
now.
hard.
So it's a new solution that you
Yeah.
bring to the table for the new problem.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying, but I think it's kind of like I said before. It's like everything is difficult. It's always been hard.
Yeah.
You know, there's not. I don't believe that there's been a time and period or a period in time. Sorry, that has just been nothing but easygoing.
Well, again, you said life is about ups and downs, and if
Yeah.
it flat lines, you're gone.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
I just think life is hard, and I don't think that's going to change. I think the perspective of it will always change. Like technology is still fairly brand new in terms of being able to interact with everybody in the world. So obviously that's going to have its implications. Like there's going to be a consequence to it. You can't just have something exist without it having some form of weight or substance in the world, right? Especially like, again, we're so used to it, but like Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook, all that stuff is, when you look at it from the outside world, it's a crazy thing, right? Just to be able to send someone anything at any given moment just because you want to. Yeah,
Just
and
constantly
we're just really used to it, and like I get that too, because I mean, how many times do we see things in the run of our life that has just become common, but realistically, it's crazy that this is even there. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's bonkers, but it's real and it's put into our lives and it's there, and you just get used to it. But it is crazy to think about it, that you can just send anyone anything at any given moment because you want to, and then some people who are really good at this technology thing can take or see anything at any given moment, and that is genuinely terrifying. Imagine, you're a big important person, and then all of a sudden you're targeted by someone who can control your phone. You're like, oh.
Yeah, well,
It was funny because I dared one of my friends to do it, because he was like, I could probably hack your one account. I forgot what it was. Might have been a Snapchat or something. I was like, there's no way you can do it. I was like, you're not smart enough. Just like roasting him. I was like, I know how stupid you are. You won't be able to do it. Within like an hour and a half, he had my Snapchat. I was like, I hate this. I was like, I was like, I don't like this at all. Yeah. And I was like, well, never make fun of him again. So that was simple. But yeah, so like it's a real thing that can happen. It's just, we don't always expect it. And I think I can compare that to my mom being sick. Like, people get sick. Cancer is what, 1 in 2 now? It's almost getting to the point where it's like 60%. Like, I think it's like 50 something. But I mean, it's over the 1 in 2 mark. So like 6 out of 10 people are getting cancer. And that's like that alone is something that is crazy.
It is crazy.
And yet, when my mom got cancer, I was still, I don't know, brashful enough to be like, I can't believe it's my mom. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe it's my mom that got sick. But it's people's moms, it's people's dads and their brothers and their sisters, and it's just a lot. It's just a lot, and it happens. But I don't think you really recognize that it happens until it hits you, or hits, because I've had friends who've had, who had parents who had cancer, and that didn't even hit me the same. It kind of just became like a thing off to the side where you're like, oh, that's really happening, and it might hit you in the moment. And it might hit you a couple times sporadically whenever something might happen. Like, you can't go over to their house anymore because you might be sick. And if they get sick, it's really bad. But it still never really hit me until my mom got sick. And, I had to watch. Like, this part is burned into my brain. I've talked about it before, but like, she got so sick that she couldn't get up from the couch. And like, I had to pick my mom up and bring her to the washroom and then bring her back. And like, that messed me up big time, because I don't know, you just think she's like the Wonder Woman, right? Like, you don't get sick, and when you do get sick, you bounce back. You have never needed my help for anything, and now all of a sudden I have to help you go to the washroom. And like, what do you do? Like, no one teaches you that. No one teaches you how to respond to that, or how to feel, or how to figure that out, or even how to accept it, because that's like the hardest part. Like, accepting it, like, that's the part that really got me. Like, that's where I'm in now. My mom's sick. She's dying. And you have to basically pray, just to have hope. Not even that she makes it through, just to have hope that you can be yourself, like that you can get through it. And that's a pretty selfish thing to say out loud, but it was true. Like, I used to wonder if I could get through it. Being woke up sometimes in the middle of the night just to help my mom, like, out of bed, and I carry her to the washroom and she's not herself at all because she's so sick. Like that's the other thing I've never experienced. I've never been in enough pain where I'm delusional ever. Thankfully. Like that's not something I'm bragging about, but it's true. Like I've never been in so much pain that I don't know that there's a world around me. And to see that in the middle of the night and that was for weeks. And it's just it's tough.
Yeah.
But no one explains that. Like that's not something that you're ever taught or you figure it out as you go. Mm-hmm. And that
you kind of you're just thrown into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's something that anybody could say to prepare you for that.
I don't think so either. I mean, you wish there was, but I don't think so. I think everyone's grief is different because I think everyone's love is different. The amount, the capacity, the ability to love, the ability to be loved, to receive it. I think that's different for everyone. So then when that's, when that's ripped away, whether it's by death, from my personal experience, you're kind of just left hanging on to it. And it's weird because sometimes I wonder if it's made me colder, if it's made me more like edged off, because it's difficult not to have empathy, but to be empathetic all the time, because my world felt really stable, and then it just gets like flipped a little bit, just enough that it keeps spinning, but you are on it now and you don't really know exactly what to do. Because that's the weirdest thing. When my mom died, like, sounds stupid, and probably, everyone already knows this, but like, the day didn't stop. You know what I mean? Like, I still had to call in to my boss and tell him I wasn't coming into work. I still had to eat food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I still was tired enough that I had to go, like, nothing, it sounds awful, but like nothing changed, but everything changed.
Yeah.
And I know how that's contradictory, but that's really how it felt. Like nothing changed because I still had to be human. I still had to be me, whatever that was, whoever that was that showed up. But everything changed.
Yeah.
The way I looked at life, the way I felt about life.
I remember being a kid when my grandfather died, and having the same sort of experience where it was all this pain and everything. I just wanted everything to stop.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, the days are still going here. Time still passes.
Yeah, I
the
struggle
nights
with that.
come, the mornings come, and it keeps
Yeah,
going.
I struggle with that the most because you just like, I'm not sure, I shouldn't be speaking like for the masses, but you kind of just hope that it was a dream.
Yeah.
Like you really do. You just really hope that it's some like awful, evil trick that like she's just showing up tomorrow. And that's the one that messed with me the most because there's no reason for you to think that. Like there's no logical, like I seen her die. Like, you know what I mean? I was there, I was in the bedroom, and you still like when you go down to even like when you went down to the church, I was like, man, why do I feel like she's gonna pop up? Like why do I feel like she's coming back? And that messed with me for a long time. I guess the actuality of it, like they're gone. That was still is sometimes the toughest part.
I think that's normal.
Yeah.
I think those thoughts are normal.
I'm sure to an extent.
I feel like,
but it was tough.
I feel like what I've experienced with this is extremely similar. I feel like that's a normal response to think, no, this can't be, because when something like this happens, there's a lot of denial.
Yeah, because like I know like the 5 stages of grief, but even those, they don't feel real. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I'm not angry, and then you're super angry.
Really angry.
Yeah, you're not bargaining, but yet you're doing everything to bargain.
Yes.
You don't even know what you're bargaining with anymore. You're just like, I would do anything in the world.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why they're called stages, because you go through them and it doesn't feel real in any way. But
I know it's such a how do I put this? Might say it wrong, but unique experience to go through the process of losing somebody.
Yeah.
It's not something you do every day, thank God.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's not something you're normal.
It
happens, but you're not used to that.
It's a weird thing to be like, you kind of like taught how to live, but you're not really taught anything about how to live when someone dies. I think that's kind of weird in a way because everyone dies, and that's like a really harsh reality.
It is, yeah.
Like for me, I still don't, I guess, know how to handle it.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got a phenomenal solution to a modern problem. I think you have a modern solution to a modern problem.
I honestly just hope it helps someone. Because, like, I just think about the person that I was. And, like, I ruined relationships. He was an awful employee. Just to be transparent, whether or not that matters or not. I just wasn't a good version of Sam. And I'm embarrassed about it. I'm regretful over it. And I even seen parts of me that I just wish I never. Because it still comes back sometimes. And sometimes I'm still too prideful or egotistical to acknowledge that it's coming back. And sometimes it comes out of nowhere. And I pretend like I'm better than it. Like that my grief is smaller than me or I can handle it.
Yeah.
And so far, I haven't won yet. So hopefully this can help someone.
It's not something that just goes away overnight. And I found that it went away and then it will come back. But
there's this really cool analogy. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but that brought up a really cool analogy of there's a cannonball in a glass jar, like something like this actually. And at first the cannonball like barely fits, and it's a cannonball, so it breaks the jar frequently. And you're feeling that frequently. Like it's always broken. You don't feel like it's ever going to go back together. But then the jar gets bigger, and the jar gets bigger, and it's still a cannonball. So like when it's rolling around, it still dents it, it'll still break it, it'll still smash it, it'll still happen. But it just gets more space. And I've kind of learned to acknowledge that that's kind of what my grief is. Yeah. It's kind of this thing that I don't really get to control when it breaks the glass, but at least I'm giving it more and more space so that it's not every day, it's not every moment, it's not as big as what it was when it first happened. Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of sitting with that analogy for a few years now.
Yeah. Well, I think we're at our time limit.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
There was something that...
oh, jeez, no. I've talked too much, sure.
No, not at all.
No, it was good. It was really good. I'm just... do you want to pull up?
Yeah, there was something that I wanted to say. There's a lot of things that I want to say. I feel like I could chat with you about this for a long while.
We can do a sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I love the idea of Talk to Me or whatever you choose to call the Grief and Trauma app.
Cross-pollination, man.
Yeah, we've had the chats early on. Like we sat down at the table at Element and we worked through some things. I gotta say,
I got some crazy overpriced nachos. I will never forget. That was like $30 for like Tostito chips and cheese. Yeah. But I supported, man, local business.
I feel like that's the cheapest you can get anything now.
Oh man, well that was before everything became $40. It was hilarious.
Well, I mean, I love the idea of the app. I'd love to continue the conversation and keep me updated. Of course, keep everyone updated as it comes out.
Yes.
But thank you so much for being here and being so open and vulnerable.
Oh, the last thing, of course.
Thanks for having me.
Is the app launched? Where can people find it? How can they find it more? How can they get on a wait list?
Yeah, all those things. Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, we actually pivoted pretty majorly. I was talking this before I got on here, that we actually found someone who was going to help us build it and build it in a way where we're like really proud of it. And so that has changed a lot of it. Okay. We're hoping to get it out by the end of this year. But to be honest, we did have like an open beta list, but we're kind of just going as we can right now because of just the nature of it. We're going to try to get it out as quickly as possible.
Well, when it does launch.
So when it does launch, see that I'm wondering I'm not sure if I can say it or not, to be honest. I know it sounds really silly. Yeah, I know it sounds really silly.
Just say it.
But like we're doing a lot of it through, our plan is to do it through the government. Yeah. So they're probably going to have the first access of it just to make sure that it's doing what we really intended it to. And then we'll be able to launch it like in the App Store as a public thing. And honestly, the way to find it would just be following like mine or we have a LinkedIn and an Instagram. Talk to me. It's nothing elaborate. It's just pretty simple because again, just trying to make it as simple as possible.
Sure.
What's your Instagram handle?
I haven't been on it in forever, but I think it's just
Check it out.
I think it's just talk to me.
Like
I
talk
think-
underscore two
I think
underscore me.
it's literally just talk to me. Like,
And I
simple
guess
as
when
that.
this when it does launch, you'll come back and tell us more about it. And,
I mean, I'd love to.
yeah.
Talk to me app. Just dots in between each word instead of spaces. Just
Okay.
make it just make it look like there's spaces. But yeah, that's it, honestly. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you so
Perfect.
much for being here.
Jeez, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
appreciate it.
man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, thanks again.